next speaker, Rohit Ji Sathe. Rohit has been holding the role and responsibility of managing over $1 billion business. He's into a global supply chain management. And very interesting, like Dr. Telang mentioned, that while we were ready to produce sanitizer, we didn't know how to make the bottles and the dispenser, and this becomes a part of the overall supply chain when a final product gets in the hands of users. He is a chief procurement and supply chain officer and an investor into a Sunrise Medical. It is a privately held equity owned healthcare company in Germany. He is based out of Frankfurt. He has lived in multiple countries, including Saudi Arabia, Holland, France, US, everywhere. So, practically over 40 countries, he has seen how the business has been. His expertise lies there. I will request Rohit ji to share his thoughts. Over to you, Rohit ji.
Rohit.
Right. Thank you, Madhav. How much time do I have, Mr. Ganu?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. All right, great. So, firstly, I've spent so much of time working in the corporate sector that I have to rely on using a PowerPoint slide deck to sort of guide me through this conversation. I want to start really by thanking two individuals. One, Mr. Anand Ganu, and two, Ajit Ranade, for two things. The first thing is their continuous commitment, I want to say actually relentless commitment to building communities and to inspire people to share and grow one another. And the second is for inviting me to share my story alongside with some very accomplished, I want to say Indian citizens or people of Indian origin, because I don't know what citizenship each one of them have. So alongside His Excellency Dr. Telang, Rishikesh Kulkarni, Sanjay Tambe, and Mr. Kinney. I'm particularly honored to be here today because exactly, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks ago, this space was shared by probably one of the greatest Indians. And I want to say a legendary Indian, Mr. Raghunath Mashelkar. So I'm particularly honored to sort of be here. What I'm going to talk about today essentially is three things. One, I'll set the context, I'll set the stage. I'll talk about how my team managed the supply chain for my company through the pandemic. And thirdly, I'll talk about the lessons that we learned and what is it that we're going to do going forward. So as Madhav introduced, I'm responsible for global procurement and supply chain. So any product or any component that comes into one of our 10 factories globally, or any service that we spend money on, it's me and my team who are responsible to manage all of that. So I want to sort of set the table. First and foremost, we are a company that manufactures extremely customized and bespoke products and distributes them in 130 countries all over the world. It's very important you note the words bespoke and customized because these products are customized to the needs of every individual patient. Okay. In order to produce the large diversity of these products to serve the needs of hundreds of thousands of users all over the world, my team is buying anywhere between 40,000 to 60,000 unique part numbers in 10 manufacturing locations worldwide. Almost 60% of the product that we purchase is purchased from overseas. China being one of the countries, Mexico being another country, and so on and so forth. So when you put all of this in the context of the pandemic, you can possibly imagine the difficulty and the challenges that we had to face to keep our manufacturing going. Another very important thing to keep in mind is, when you order a Volkswagen car or an Audi car, you have the possibility to choose options. I want this kind of a GPS, I want that kind of a trim. After you place that order, you can wait for up to 6 months before you get the car. But when my factory receives an order with thousands of different combinations, I have to ship that order in 3 to 10 days. So if I'm selling in Holland, in Netherlands, I have to ship it in 3 days. If I'm in North America, it's a larger continent, I may have up to 10 days to ship it. And the last thing is, you see, there is sufficient history amongst all of us on, how do you manage a crisis when there's an earthquake? How do you manage a crisis when there is an oil spill? How do you manage a crisis when there's a revolution? How do you manage a crisis when there is, a Fukushima sort of an event? But in the recent past, we've never faced a pandemic. So we were facing a crisis, not just we, but all politicians, public leaders, business professionals all over the world, they're facing a crisis where there is no playbook. You don't know how to solve the problem. So the best thing that you can do, and I have tremendous respect for, business leaders, government professionals, primarily because they're making a decision with very limited knowledge. I always use a very simple synonym is, when you are in the COVID-19 crisis, it's like a train which is in the tunnel. Everything is dark around you. You know that you will come out of the tunnel at some point in time, but you don't know when. And with limited pieces of information, you need to run your business. So here I'll try to sort of describe how we should have led through the crisis. And in fact, it was in the end of January, my wife and I, we were just out for a drink in the evening in Frankfurt. And my wife is a Singaporean national with Chinese roots. So she's connected with, on this program called WeWork. So she gets news on what's happening in China. And we were talking and we started to talk about COVID-19. And she said, hey, Rohit, this is going to get worse before it gets any better. Right at that instant, I called the waiter. I said, I need the bill. I need to go home. I went home. First thing I did was I invited my team for a meeting immediately next day in the morning. Towards the end of January, most of Europe and North America then had not even woken up to the fact that COVID is going to come to them. But right at the end of January, I set up a global supply management task force. Very, very early on. Right after, I called my CFO and called the CEO. And I said, this is going to get worse before it gets better. We need to communicate to our customers. We need to inform our shareholders. We need to tell our board that supply chain is going to undergo a tremendous amount of stress. But the global procurement and supply chain team has a full plan in place to weather the storm. So it was very, very important for me, I felt, to give all of my stakeholders a sense of comfort that when they're interacting with Sunrise Medical, when they're interacting with Rohit, there needs to be a sense of comfort and calm that the product is going to come out of the door. I told my team one very simple thing. Whatever happens, none of my consumer, patient, anywhere in the 130 countries of the world should ever have to undergo any kind of discomfort because of missing material. I told each one of them that every day when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself one question. What haven't I thought about? Because everything that you have not thought about is going to happen and you have to plan for that. And last but not the least, Dr. Telang referred to this. And I told them now is the time that we need to leverage the crisis to drive effective change through the complete supply chain. We need to share. We need to repurpose materials. We need to, where it makes sense, instead of buying material from suppliers, make the product in-house, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are countless number of stories that I'm happy to sort of share with any of you over a period of time as we sort of continue our engagement. And last but not the least, I want to sort of wrap up by sharing my learnings, right? And literally, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, there is a very, very famous Indian professor in Harvard Business School called Professor Ranjay Gulati. I encourage all of you to listen to his YouTube videos. where what he basically talks about is we are transitioning from surviving a crisis or surviving adversity to thriving in adversity or thriving in challenges. And he feels that all businesses that are successful to figure out a way to thrive through adversity are businesses which are resilient and are businesses that will do fantastic jobs for their respective communities. What did we learn? First and foremost, and I again refer back to the purpose of Garje Marathi, and that is that investing in relationships, building relationships, investing in networks, growing networks, respecting other individuals, sharing information is the only way forward. There is no other way. Absolutely, there is no other way. I have lived it for the last 12 months. Everyone who helped me, they helped me because I had a relationship with them. They had 10 other people who were asking for their help. So I want to encourage all of you who are on this call to invest in this community, build your respective communities, share information, and lift up the knowledge levels within members of the community. The second is the importance of what I call connecting the dots. See, each one of us are wired. We are receiving hundreds of pieces of information. We are sitting in board meetings. We're, engaging with people. It's very important that you need to connect what you hear to what you need to act. And I'm just going to wrap up by saying, plan for the worst, communicate effectively, and focus on thriving through adversity and not just surviving in adversity. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Perfectly worded. Madhav, take over, please.
So thank you, Rohit. Your idea of connecting dots, your idea of sharing a relationship. Again, as I said, that's at the core of Garje Marathi. It was a very